During our junior year, I encountered Cindy. She was pursuing dual degrees in education and business administration, while I was enrolled in an engineering program with the aspiration of becoming the first member of my family to earn a college degree. Cindy's educational aspirations were shaped by her parents' example. She embraced the idea of embracing new knowledge on a daily basis. This approach resonated with me, as my parents, who managed a modest farm, also placed a premium on learning and self-improvement. To fund my education, I was employed at a local tutoring service, thereby reducing my reliance on student loans. Midway through the semester, our professor assigned us to groups. Initially, I was disinclined to participate, but my attitude changed when Cindy was placed in my group. In our political science class, we were tasked with analyzing a renowned Supreme Court case. We were required to elucidate the case, discuss the decision, and argue its merits. We were assigned Marbury versus Madison. In the landmark case of Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court was limited in its power to prevent it from becoming more influential than the other branches of government. This decision shaped the Supreme Court as we know it today. We had a strong connection and began dating exclusively. Prior to this, I had not dated much due to financial constraints. However, Cindy was supportive and enjoyed simple activities like watching TV with me or taking walks. We engaged in a variety of activities, including walks, picnics, and museum visits, which constituted significant milestones in our relationship. I developed a profound affinity for Cindy, and she reciprocated my feelings. We proceeded to formalize our union shortly after graduation. During the initial 5-year period of our marriage, our lives were characterized by a profound sense of contentment. Our intimate life was fulfilling, and our modest new residence proved to be an ideal setting for us, particularly given that we had recently relocated to a new neighborhood. We swiftly established a network of friends and cultivated a dynamic social life. Cindy assumed the role of an 8th-grade teacher at a middle school in northern Palm Beach County, and I obtained employment with a prominent engineering firm in South Florida. However, over time, I came to realize that I did not derive satisfaction from engineering. As a junior engineer, I was confined to the less engaging responsibilities, and I sought an alternative. I decided to pursue a master's degree, anticipating that it would facilitate a salary increase in more stimulating roles. Instead, I only received a $500 bonus, which I found disappointing. Consequently, I chose to pursue a PhD, despite the lack of stimulation in my current role. We were generally satisfied with our circumstances. Cindy's career was thriving, and we were deeply in love. Financially, we were comfortable, and we discussed the possibility of starting a family. However, as the adage goes, all good things must come to an end. The first piece of unfavorable news came when my supervisor informed me that I was being reassigned from design work to inspections. Inspections were even more tedious than the design work I had been doing. The second piece of news, which initially seemed favorable, was that Cindy was moving to a new position as the head of the guidance department at West Jupiter High School. This promotion would later prove to be a significant misstep. The third significant issue in my life arose when Brock Turner was appointed as the principal at Cindy's school. He was a former National Football League player who had played for 5 seasons with 3 different teams. Brock was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in the 3rd round as an inside linebacker but was traded after 2 seasons, despite having performed well. He spent 2 years in Seattle. Subsequently, he was traded to Philadelphia, where he had another strong season but ultimately concluded his career due to a significant ankle injury sustained during a playoff game. Upon realizing that his football career was over, Brock attempted to pursue a career in television due to his natural charisma. However, his on-screen charm was perceived as arrogance, resulting in his dismissal from the industry. He then worked at a regional bank in customer service for 9 months but resigned due to his dislike of office work. Brock eventually became a gym teacher. He subsequently assumed the roles of teacher and football coach at a suburban high school in Philadelphia, where he remained for a period of 3 years. He then proceeded to ascend to the position of assistant principal and head football coach. Despite maintaining a winning record, the team was ultimately unable to achieve success in the postseason. Upon the retirement of the principal at Cindy's school, Brock submitted an application for the position and was subsequently appointed to the role for the first year. My discourse with Brock was more extensive than that with Cindy. Initially, I was impressed by his status as a former NFL player. However, my opinion underwent a transformation following our interaction. I found him to be self-absorbed. In contrast, his wife April was charming, intelligent, and somewhat reserved. She was also remarkably attractive, bearing a resemblance to a smaller, more beautiful version of Whitney Houston. I was perplexed by her choice to associate with Brock, yet many of the school staff, including Cindy, were drawn to him. I attempted to suggest to Cindy that her superior was a womanizer, but she merely laughed and asserted that I was merely envious. I acknowledged my feelings of envy. He is taller and more physically fit than I am, and he is also a professional football player. Cindy embraced me and reassured me that I did not need to be envious. She pointed out that he is only a few inches taller than me and that I am in excellent physical condition. She also noted that his previous career as a football player was not a significant issue. Her reassurance helped me to calm down, and we proceeded to interact with Brock even though I remained uneasy. Cindy frequently invited me to at every school event. We were seated with Brock and his wife, April. I had the opportunity to converse with April on occasion and learned that she and Brock had been married for 3 years and had a daughter named Tiffany. At the school district's Christmas party, I observed the behavior of Brock, who was discourteous. Cindy's perception of my jealousy was misguided. Brock's treatment of April at the party was also a source of concern. He asked Cindy to dance without even checking with me first, which I found to be discourteous. Furthermore, I was annoyed that Cindy did not even check with me to see if I was okay with it. I observed for a while and saw that Brock was holding Cindy at a respectful distance. I moved over to talk to April and we had a productive conversation. I learned that she was April was a time professor at a local community college that had recently become a 4-year college. She taught French and German. Her mother's family had relocated from the Congo to France and her father was German. April was born after her parents had moved to the United States. The college had only recently become a 4-year institution and it was still hiring teaching staff. April hoped that her part-time job would lead to a full-time position. In the course of our conversation, April demonstrated photographs of their daughter, who bore a striking resemblance to April herself. I was amused when April recounted various endearing actions performed by Tiffany. Brock and Cindy returned to the table and Brock appeared displeased to see me engaged in conversation with his wife. He asserted, in a rather harsh tone, that I was occupying his seat. I was taken aback by his demeanor but apologized and relocated. I then offered to procure beverages for the entire group. She requested another glass of Chardonnay and Cindy desired a Coke. On my return, Brock grasped my arm, removed the wine glass from my grasp, and threatened, "Stay away from my wife or I'll assault you." I inquired, "What is the matter with you? Why are you behaving in such an aggressive manner?" "Just stay away from my wife," he replied as he walked away. Shortly thereafter, Brock announced that he and April were departing. His abrupt departure was surprising, and Cindy's angry glare was equally shocking. On my return home, Cindy confronted me. I inquired as to whether I had done something to upset Brock. "I had not done anything," I replied. "He was upset with you," Cindy insisted. "I was just being polite while you were dancing without checking if I was okay with it," I explained. "What does that mean?" Cindy demanded. I snapped, "I don't want to discuss Brock anymore." After the Christmas party, my feelings about Brock shifted from discomfort to outright dislike. However, I was disinclined to cause trouble since he was Cindy's boss. Fortunately, after that Christmas event, Cindy rarely brought up Brock. A few months into the new year, the economy took a serious downturn, hitting the real estate markets hard at first. My company was unaffected because we had plenty of work lined up. However, as time went on and no new projects came in, people started becoming anxious. I kept my head down and worked diligently, but I knew that if the economy didn't improve, the possibility of layoffs was a concern that lingered in the background. Cindy returned home elated, having been selected to organize a career assembly at her school. I was perplexed by her enthusiasm, as I believed the students would be primarily interested in the fact that they would be excused from class for a few periods. Nevertheless, I supported her excitement. Had I been aware that Brock had chosen her for the task, I might have been less inclined to assist. As it turned out, I was glad I had. Cindy had already arranged for an accountant, a lawyer, a nurse, a computer programmer, and several other professionals to speak. She then requested that I arrange for an engineer from my company to give a brief presentation. I consulted with my supervisor the following day and was granted approval on the condition that I take a personal day, as it was for Cindy. I agreed to this arrangement. The career assembly was scheduled to last 2 hours, with 12 different professionals, each speaking for 10 minutes. However, on career day, 4 of the speakers either cancelled or did not appear. Cindy was visibly distressed, nearly in tears. I reassured her that there was no cause for concern and proceeded to fill in for the absent accountant, lawyer, auto mechanic, and doctor. When it was my turn to speak, I gave Cindy a kiss and told her not to worry as I ascended the stairs to the stage. I observed a group of high school students who appeared extremely disinterested. The only reason they had not yet departed was that they would have to return to class while my slides were being. I began my presentation with an opening remark, requesting that any students who were asleep to please raise their hands. Nearly every hand was raised and the students laughed. I then informed them that I hoped they would find my talk interesting and that, if not, at least it would keep them out of class for a bit longer. The students cheered. Taking a deep breath, I began, I am an engineer, but today I will talk about a few different professions. Furthermore, I will provide guidance on how to achieve success in any chosen field, including strategies for navigating the stresses of high school. Many students found this advice amusing, but they also demonstrated increased attentiveness. I began with a light-hearted remark about engineers, emphasizing that they are not solely perceived as nerds. To illustrate the versatility of engineers, I shared a story about an engineer who was riding a new bicycle across campus when he encountered another engineer. An engineering student was riding a shiny new bike across campus when he encountered another engineer. The latter inquired about the provenance of the bicycle. The first student replied that he would not believe the story if he had not heard it himself. He proceeded to relate how a woman had approached him and, removing her clothes, demanded that he choose an item of her choosing. The second engineer expressed admiration for the student's decision, noting that the woman's attire would have been ill-suited to her request. The presentation concluded with a reminder that engineers are practical thinkers. I then proceeded to present a series of slides, each showcasing a unique and intriguing structure. One slide depicted a carpet museum with a roof that resembled a rolled-up carpet, eliciting a hearty laugh from the audience. Another slide featured the crooked house, which appeared to be leaning in various directions. I also presented a building designed to resemble a vast picnic basket. To conclude the presentation, I displayed a plain 9-story building. I then presented a slide featuring a story building and invited the audience to guess what made it special. After several attempts, I revealed that it was Europe's largest brothel. It is 9 stories high and located in Germany. For those interested, the male attendees applauded, while the female attendees reacted with surprise. I then proceeded to discuss various professions, covering average salaries and the education required for each. I incorporated more humor and provided guidance on effective studying and test-taking strategies. I posited that to succeed in any endeavor, one should always strive to do better than one's best. This may seem counterintuitive, but I explained that if one does not challenge oneself to improve, one will not become better. I also emphasized that there is no such thing as a dumb question and that seeking assistance is a prudent decision, unlike those who do not seek help. Finally, I discussed individuals who choose not to attend college but instead work in trades. I encouraged those interested in this path. I also explained that they might earn more than many college graduates. I was enjoying the presentation and did not realize I had exceeded my time limit until Cindy signaled for me to conclude. I concluded my talk with one final piece of advice: everyone must give a public speech at some point. It is one of the most common fears people have, even more so than death. Most of you will face this challenge eventually. When that occurs, remember to stand up straight. It is therefore important to ensure that your audience can see you clearly and hear you properly. Your speech should be brief and to the point, and you should conclude it promptly to ensure that your audience is appreciative. I would like to thank you for your excellent performance, which was met with a standing ovation, a kiss from Cindy and a handshake from Brock. However, there was more. I was also approached by 3 other high school principals who requested that I give a talk at their schools. I informed them that I had taken a personal day off to give the talk for Cindy, but that eventually I was persuaded to give the speeches at the other schools. All 3 speeches were well received, with the final one at a high school in a disadvantaged area. The principal expressed a desire for me to become one of their teachers. I felt a sense of accomplishment, but this was soon followed by a downturn in circumstances. On a Monday morning, I was called into my boss's office and informed that I was being laid off. The severance package was reasonable and included 3 months' pay and health insurance coverage. Upon returning home, I informed Cindy of the layoff. Her immediate response was concern about the mortgage. I simply thanked her for her support and proceeded to the den, which we had designated as our office. I powered on the computer and began searching for new employment opportunities. A few minutes later, Cindy entered the room quietly and apologized, stating that she was simply worried about losing the house. I kissed her and embraced her. I reassured her that the company had provided me with 3 months of severance pay. I was entitled to 3 months severance pay, and I was confident that I would secure employment within that time frame. However, as the severance pay period drew to a close and I remained unemployed, Cindy's pressure to find work intensified. The tension in our home grew as I encountered successive rejections. I began to perceive myself as a failure. Then, an incident occurred that exacerbated my distress. Alan Ladner, the vice principal at West Jupiter High School, left for a new position in California. Brock was promptly promoted. Cindy took his place from that point forward. I was obliged to hear about how much everyone loved Mr. Turner, how highly the teachers thought of him, and how he was being considered for the deputy superintendent role. My dislike for Brock Turner reached new heights as I remained unemployed for a 4th month. I felt as though Cindy was losing respect for me. Then, an unexpected opportunity arose on the evening news. There was a story about a new program designed to attract teachers to schools in low-income areas. The program was considering the possibility of hiring individuals with life experience in lieu of a teaching certificate. However, should an individual be hired, a certificate would be required within a 2-year period. The starting salary was $3,000. Given that I had not yet secured employment in my field, I elected to apply for the position. I transmitted my curriculum vitae to the school board by facsimile the following morning, and by early afternoon, I had been scheduled for an interview the following day. I did not inform Cindy of my intention to apply for the position because I did not wish to raise her expectations. The interview concluded with an offer of employment. At the time, I was unaware that as soon as my curriculum vitae was accessed by the HR computer system, a search of my name was conducted. This search yielded a video of one of my career talks, which was then reviewed. I monitored the hiring process and was offered a position at Riviera High School, the lowest-ranked school in the county, located in Riviera Beach. Despite the impressive-sounding name, the area has been struggling for years. Riviera High School had the worst scores of all the high schools in the county, with only 6% of students being college-ready after graduation. Nevertheless, I accepted the position to teach mathematics and science. When Cindy came home that night, I eagerly shared the news about my new job. I anticipated her to be happy and supportive, but instead, she appeared horrified and stated that she did not want me to accept the position because it was too dangerous. She informed me of some of the unfortunate incidents that had occurred at the school, such as the presence of metal detectors at every entrance and security personnel patrolling the hallways. Last year, 3 teachers had been attacked and 1 had been stabbed. Cindy also reminded me that I lacked teaching experience and expressed doubt about my ability to persevere in the role, based on her conversations with several individuals and her observations. On my first day, I was further unsettled by the school's appearance. The building was old and poorly maintained, with graffiti on the exterior and more inside. Students traversed the hallways with a sense of entitlement, and there were security personnel stationed at various points, including outside the bathrooms. I had developed a series of lesson plans but decided to temporarily defer their implementation in order to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the environment. Instead, I utilized mathematics and science as a means of engaging the students. The games were enjoyable and straightforward, and the students were unaware that they were actually learning some of the material they needed for the end-of-year tests. The new principal at the school, Ben Carlson, was a tall, 240-pound black man who did not tolerate any nonsense. This made him an excellent choice for the position. The students quickly learned that it was unwise to cross him. He was a strong believer in strict discipline, which I also supported. I especially liked his approach of the removal of all gang members from regular classes and their placement in a separate class with rotating teachers and 3 security guards was an effective strategy. Any gang members who misbehaved were given 1 warning and then expelled by the 3rd week. The most troublesome gang members were either expelled or had left on their own. While this approach may appear harsh, it was necessary to ensure the safety of the students. My wife underestimated my ability to persevere in the role. By December, I had not only completed the first week but was also thriving in the position. I revised my lesson plans to include a new set of games, and the students responded favorably. By the end of the year, other teachers had adopted some of my ideas and they appeared to be effective. Riviera High School improved its academic ranking from 58th to 51st, and I was nominated for Teacher of the Year. Although I did not win, being nominated was an honor. I was somewhat disappointed that Cindy did not seem impressed with my work. She repeatedly asked when I would stop wasting time and return to engineering. I eventually informed her that I would not be returning to engineering, as I had developed a passion for teaching. She was not entirely pleased with my decision, but she appeared to accept it during the Christmas break. I decided to finally pursue the PhD that I had postponed due to the economic downturn. I was not particularly interested in mechanical engineering, but I was very interested in computers, so I chose to pursue a PhD in computer engineering. I was aware from my last conversation with April, which took place almost a year ago, that she was working on her PhD. In comparative studies at Florida Atlantic University, FAU, I investigated the PhD programs at FAU and elected to enroll there for my computer engineering PhD. I spent another year at Riviera Beach High School, where our academic rankings improved from 51st to 46th place. During that time, the school board promoted Cindy to vice principal at West Jupiter High School. However, that summer, amidst our lives' relocation, I received some encouraging news. Brock was promoted to deputy superintendent, and Cindy was nominated to become the new principal of West Jupiter High School. Despite my reservations about Brock, I was relieved that his new role meant he would be working at the district headquarters. Cindy wasn't seeing him every day, but she still had to visit the headquarters once a week. Initially, I was unhappy about this, but I learned it was typical for new principals. I continued taking classes at FAU, which was about a 40-minute drive away. Given that April was also pursuing her PhD at the same institution, I proposed that we utilize the opportunity to carpool. April expressed interest in this arrangement, but when she conveyed this to Brock, he reacted with extreme displeasure. He promptly contacted me and issued a vehement threat. I had anticipated that he might not approve of the carpooling, but I did not anticipate such an extreme display of hostility. I was disappointed by his reaction because I had enjoyed conversing with April and carpooling with her. Despite this, carpooling would have made the drive more pleasant. April and I often met for coffee during our class breaks. Sometimes others joined us, but often it was just the two of us. Initially, we only engaged in small talk, but over time, we discussed a wide range of topics. Despite Brock's jealousy, April and I became close friends. She even suggested I apply for a job at the new 4-year college. During my first year at the college, I was grateful for the suggestion, but I informed her that I was being considered for the position of head guidance counselor at a new high school. In the course of our conversations, I learned some details about April and Brock. I discovered that April had graduated with top honors from Stanford University before moving back to her parents' home in Philadelphia. She met Brock at a charity event and did not initially feel a connection with him. However, Brock was persistent, and they eventually began dating. It was not long before April felt a profound sense of love for him. From the way Brock ensured that other men did not pursue April, it was evident that he was wholly devoted to her. Approximately a year after their marriage, April mentioned that Brock did not spend much time with their daughter and had limited patience with her. He had been hoping for a son. I laughed. Tiffany is such a sweet little girl. If Cindy and I have a daughter, I hope she is just like Tiffany. Thank you, April said, giving me a kiss on the cheek one evening during class. The teacher began to feel unwell and was obliged to leave. I could have departed approximately 20 minutes earlier, but I elected to remain and consume coffee with April. I was already in the cafeteria when April arrived with some of her classmates. I lifted the cup of coffee I had purchased for her, and she proceeded to join me while her classmates obtained their own beverages. You didn't have to do that, she said with a smile. It was no trouble, I replied with a smile of my own. I had been in this location for approximately 15 minutes when I returned for a second cup. I became aware that your class would soon be on a break, so it was not a significant issue. Did your class conclude early? April inquired as she sipped her coffee. The teacher became ill. April was silent for a moment before she said softly, I envy you, Todd. I should be further along with my studies, but Brock has made it challenging. He is pressuring me to have another child, hoping for a boy. However, if I do that, it will delay my PhD by years and hinder my chances of becoming an associate professor. Therefore, I informed him that I would not consider I would like to have another child until I finish my PhD. He was not pleased with this decision. April retrieved her cell phone from her purse and said quietly, Is something wrong? I inquired, I need to inform Brock that I have to stay late for a meeting with my advisor, but my phone is dead. Can she use yours? She replied, Sure, but do you think that's a good idea? April thought for a moment and then agreed, You're right. There is no point in making things worse. Amy, can I borrow your phone for a minute? April quickly dialed Brock's number and I heard her say, Shoot. Once more, another issue arose. I inquired as to whether April could assist me. She replied with evident frustration, informing me that Brock's voicemail was full 2 days ago and that he had not yet cleared it. I requested her assistance in delivering a note to his residence. April rummaged through her backpack and produced a piece of paper and an envelope. She wrote a brief note and sealed it in the envelope. I requested that she deliver it to my house on her way home. I anticipated that Brock would be displeased, but I suggested that she simply inform him that I had attempted to reach him but was unable to do so due to his voicemail being full. She agreed to do so. I requested that you deliver this note. I am currently running behind schedule, yet I agreed to assist with the delivery. I assumed that Brock would not be displeased, as I was merely relaying a message from his wife. I was unable to dispel the notion that I was being punished for delivering the note, and I found myself laughing at my own predicament as I turned onto Turner Street. My initial confusion was replaced by unease when I observed my wife's VW parked in Brock's driveway. I was unable to discern why Cindy would. I was perplexed by the presence of my wife at Brock's residence at such an unusual hour. I parked my vehicle on the street, attempting to comprehend the rationale behind her visit. I deliberated over a plausible rationale but was unable to formulate one. I was overcome with a sense of unease. I decided to conduct a discreet investigation by surveilling the premises. The interior lights were illuminated and the majority of window blinds were drawn. I proceeded with caution, moving to the periphery of the house, as I lacked familiarity with Brock's residence. I was uncertain about what to anticipate. I initially observed the living room, then the kitchen, and finally the third window. Upon circling the house to the rear, I observed that the blinds in the fourth room were predominantly lowered. However, 2 blinds were partially raised and 1 window was slightly ajar. What I then witnessed was astonishing. Brock was seated in a straight-back chair, entirely unclothed and in the act of donning a protective covering. This covering was of considerable dimensions, approximately 8 inches in length and of considerable thickness. At this moment, Cindy made her appearance. I was able to retrieve my phone and commence recording. Cindy emitted a brief, mirthful exclamation. I was taken aback by the magnitude of the object in question. It was the first occasion on which I observed this phenomenon. I had assumed that it would not fit, but now I am preoccupied with the idea of having you inside me, Brock. He emitted a growl and demanded that I come to him. Cindy moaned and said that she wished he would refrain from using protection. She expressed a desire for him to ejaculate inside her so that she could become pregnant by him. I felt physically ill, but what happened next was even more disturbing. Brock said, "Let's go upstairs. We have time for one more before April gets back." The woman, whom I assumed to be April, asked when we could be together constantly. Brock replied that he needed to improve his financial situation. I was initially disinclined to allow April to assume control of the situation. However, Cindy's subsequent actions, accompanied by Brock, prompted me to reconsider. I returned to my vehicle and proceeded to the nearest parking lot, where I was overcome with emotion. I was incredulous that Cindy would betray me in such a manner, particularly given our recent discussions about starting a family. After the initial shock subsided, I was filled with a profound sense of anger, a feeling that intensified to a level I had never experienced before. It became evident that my marriage was beyond repair, and my focus shifted to the extent of my disappointment. I was acutely aware of the potential for inflicting significant distress on both individuals. While I possessed the video, I was uncertain as to the extent of their emotional distress, given their professed love for one another. I was uncertain as to the most effective means of seeking retribution, but my thoughts of retaliation were soon superseded by considerations of April's safety. I promptly returned to FAU, overcome with rage and tears. Despite arriving swiftly, I was concerned that April might have already departed. I was reassured to observe her vehicle among the many vehicles were parked there. April emerged approximately 10 minutes later, and I met her outside. She immediately discerned my emotional state and appeared concerned. She inquired as to whether something had occurred with Brock or Tiffany. I shook my head, indicating that, to the best of my knowledge, they were both physically unharmed. However, I was compelled to share some distressing information. Your husband and my wife are engaged in an extramarital affair. This is not a trivial matter. April responded with urgency, stating, I am aware that you hold negative sentiments towards my husband, but I cannot accept your fabrication of stories about him. I would prefer that this information were not accurate, yet I am unable to deny its veracity, having observed the relevant evidence firsthand. April dropped her book bag and purse and began to tremble. I retrieved her belongings and suggested that we engage in a discussion. I informed her that it would be challenging to accept this information, but that she needed to be aware of its legitimacy and my sincerity. I then led her to the passenger seat of my vehicle and initiated the video recording. I provided her with my phone. April began to weep uncontrollably, even before the video concluded. I then retrieved the phone and knelt to be at her eye level. I am aware that this information is accurate. It is occurring so suddenly that I said sympathetically, you have not yet had the opportunity to process this information. However, I have already made the decision to divorce Cindy based on what Brock said in the video. He is planning to hide his money before divorcing you. April was looking puzzled, so I played the video again after seeing it a second time. April was no longer in shock, she was enraged. I had heard rumors about Brock before and during our marriage, but I did not believe them. However, if he thinks he can run off with your wife and leave, he will find himself in a disadvantageous position. April became aware of the implications of her words and expressed regret. I offer my apologies for referring to your wife in such a manner. Please do not concern yourself with it, your assertion was accurate. After ensuring April's safety to drive home and providing her with a copy of the video of Cindy and Brock, I returned home. Cindy was either asleep or feigning sleep. I was indifferent to the situation. I proceeded to our office, activated the computer, and began formulating the dissolution of my marriage. The following morning, after Cindy's departure at approximately 8, the date was the 30th of April. Monday, March 16, 2020, I proceeded to shower and prepare for the handling of our financial affairs prior to my departure. I located a divorce lawyer via online search and scheduled an appointment for the following day. Our assets were limited, and our house had minimal equity, which would necessitate its sale or the purchase of my interest by Cindy. Our joint checking, savings, and investment accounts totaled approximately $75,000. Cindy had a retirement account with the Florida retirement system, and I had a 401k account until I recently switched to the FFIs. Our retirement accounts were approximately equal in value. I anticipated that dividing our assets would be a relatively straightforward process. However, I needed to wait until I spoke with the lawyer to gain a comprehensive understanding of my exact situation. I was aware that Florida was a no-fault divorce state, and therefore, the video would not be a decisive factor in court. However, it might influence Cindy's decision regarding the divorce, particularly if she was initially inclined to resist. 00 a.m. I had already taken care of as many of the necessary tasks as possible, so I began searching for a smaller apartment. I located a one-room efficiency unit in Lake Park and proceeded to rent it. After that, I returned home and began packing my belongings at approximately 2 p.m. I came to the realization that my new apartment would not be sufficiently spacious, so I also rented a self-storage unit in the vicinity. If Cindy noticed any items missing, she did not mention it. I remained in the den, preparing for a potential new job offer. I slept on the couch there, and Cindy departed before I awoke the following day. I met with my divorce lawyer, Alicia Smithson, who was an attorney. The woman, who appeared to be middle-aged, informed me that the video would not be of assistance in the divorce proceedings. Furthermore, she cautioned me against disseminating the video online, citing the potential for legal ramifications. I awaited Cindy's return to confront her. She arrived at approximately 9 p.m. 0 p.m. On the morning in question, Cindy proceeded to walk past me in the living room. I called out, "Cindy, we need to talk." Cindy responded by stating that she was tired and needed to shower. I responded by saying, "Cindy, I don't care if you have Brock's mess on you." Cindy stopped at the bottom of the stairs, turned around, and asked, "What are you talking about? Come in here and I'll explain." I responded by saying, "I'd like to talk in here." Cindy then proceeded to cautiously walk into the room. The living room. "I believe you are indebted to me for the manner in which you have spoken to me. I am of the opinion that this is not the case." I then proceeded to open my laptop and play the video, which displayed Cindy mounting Brock. She observed the video for a brief period before closing the laptop. "Now that you have become aware of this, I see no further need for concealment," Cindy stated, displaying the video for all to see. I recall. "When you said people should learn something new every day, I concur. However, it seems you did not learn when I warned you that Brock was a womanizer. Now, he has turned you into his mistress. There is no need to be rude. I know this must be challenging for you, but a more suitable partner has taken me from you. I had hoped we could end things amicably, but it seems that is not to be. You are unwilling to confront the truth, so you must now face the consequences of your actions. I have already rented an apartment and relocated some of my belongings there. I will return for the remainder of my belongings at a later date. You may remain in the house until the divorce is finalized. After that, the house will either be sold or you can purchase my share. You will be served with the divorce papers at work on Friday. I have moved into a smaller new place and I am adjusting to my new circumstances. The initial period following the divorce was marked by a profound sense of distress, to the extent that I found it challenging to perform basic activities such as using the bathroom or eating. Fortunately, the summer season afforded me a certain degree of flexibility in my schedule, allowing me the opportunity to devote my time to contemplating ways to retaliate against my former partner. However, despite my best efforts, I was unable to identify a viable course of action. By the third day, I had forced myself to rise from bed, shower, and embark on a grocery shopping excursion. Upon returning home, I turned on the television in my kitchen, which was equipped with a modest set. The channel was broadcasting a celebrity gossip show, which immediately captured my attention. Former NFL linebacker Brock Turner and his wife are undergoing a divorce after 3 years. It appears that the rumors about Brock being a womanizer are accurate, as his wife April has filed for divorce citing infidelity. Our reporter spoke with Mr. Turner earlier today. "Mr. Turner, is it true that your wife caught you with 'I am involved with another woman'?" Brock stated, his expression indicating sadness. "My wife and I are experiencing difficulties. We are attempting to resolve a significant misunderstanding, and we kindly request privacy as we work to repair our marriage." I was not particularly satisfied with his response. I had not spoken with April since I initially informed her about her husband's affair with my wife. It seemed highly unjust that Brock had caused such distress to me. It seemed that the dissolution of the marriage was not as straightforward as it had initially appeared. There was a possibility that Turner and April were attempting to reconcile. However, this prospect was met with a surge of negative emotions, including anger and sadness. When my phone rang, a sense of fear emerged, intensifying the negative sentiments. Before I could even respond, the caller began speaking, addressing me as a jerk. The caller's tone was accusatory, implying that I was the individual who had taken photographs of him with his wife in a compromising position. The caller's intention was to threaten me and convey that he was aware of my whereabouts. I was taken aback to receive a call from Brock, but in the brief interval before he spoke, I realized that he would likely ascertain my identity as the individual who captured the video. Despite my trepidation, I was determined not to reveal my involvement. I informed him that Cindy was on the verge of becoming my former spouse. I attempted to exude confidence, suggesting that if he were residing at the property, it indicated that he had not yet resolved the misunderstanding. I advised him to watch the 6 o'clock. At midnight, I received a call from Brock Turner. I was taken aback, but I quickly regained my composure. I was not going to let him know that I was the one who took the video. I was confident that I could handle the situation. However, I was concerned about what Brock might do next. I decided to turn on the local news at 6 o'clock to see what information was available. At first, I did not find out what Brock's threat was about. It was not until about 10 minutes into the broadcast that the news anchor revealed that Palm Beach County Superintendent of Schools, SSH Crawford, had resigned to take a job with the Department of Education in Washington. The deputy superintendent, Brock Turner, had been named interim superintendent. However, it was widely believed that he would be offered the position permanently. This news instilled a deep fear in me. I was suddenly aware of the gravity of the situation. Brock's assertion that my life was in trouble, given his position as superintendent and my status as a teacher, was now clear. He was my superior, and his influence could potentially compromise my job security or even result in my indictment for actions I had not committed. It was imperative for me to regain control of the situation. Initially, I considered resigning and returning to my previous career in engineering. However, the economy was just beginning to recover, and I needed a stable income to support myself and pay for legal counsel. Cindy's lawyer was making exorbitant demands, including a $50. The sum of $50,000 was demanded to purchase Cindy's share of the house. However, the house only had approximately $220,000 in equity, making the request exorbitant. Cindy also demanded that I drop the adultery claim and accused me of hiding money. She further demanded that I pay for a forensic accountant to look into our finances, despite the unreasonable nature of her initial demands. I was still required to pay my lawyer to represent me, and feeling somewhat anxious, I recalled that April had mentioned that the college where she worked was seeking adjunct instructors. I promptly contacted their human resources department to inquire about this opportunity. They advised me to apply online, and after reviewing my credentials, they hired me to teach Algebra Pre. I was offered a 1-year contract to teach Calculus and Calculus I. I was offered a 1-year contract that paid approximately 80% of what I earned as a high school teacher. I found teaching at the college level much more fulfilling than high school teaching. In high school, I was always trying to come up with new ways to keep students engaged. However, in college, most students were genuinely interested in learning. If I made the material interesting, they were excited. 2 weeks into the job, I ran into April in the cafeteria. She seemed just as happy to see me as I was to see her. We had lunch together and caught up on each other's lives. April informed me that Brock was fighting. The divorce proceedings were protracted. He had even requested sole custody of Tiffany, but the video of him with my wife while he was supposed to be caring for his daughter convinced the judge that he was unfit to have full custody. According to April, the divorce was taking an inordinate amount of time. I explained that my own divorce had taken longer than I expected, but it finally seemed to be nearing a conclusion. April expressed disbelief at having been deceived by Brock, stating that she had heard the rumors but that he had a way of making everything he said sound plausible. He must be a persuasive individual, as he was able to convince my wife to engage in infidelity. I expressed my regret at this turn of events. April conveyed her sympathy, stating that she had learned a valuable lesson from the experience. She described me as one of the kindest individuals she had ever encountered. Following our initial meeting, April and I began having lunch together almost daily. We also frequently met for afternoon coffee, which eventually led to shared dinners and other social outings. Despite my developing feelings for April, I was reluctant to jeopardize our friendship. Nevertheless, I was drawn to pursue a romantic relationship with her. Furthermore, when the circus came to town, I decided to ask her out. I informed her one day at lunch that I was planning to take Tiffany, but she can be a challenging individual to interact with. April expressed her continued confusion regarding her father's reluctance to meet with her. He had explicitly conveyed this to me. If I proceeded with the dissolution of our marriage, he would be responsible for providing financial support for our child, but would not be involved in her life. I hope you do not mind my saying that Brock is a disagreeable individual, I said with a hint of anger, but then smiled. If you would like to attend the circus, I am confident that we can manage a 4-person trip. One year the day at the circus was a resounding success. In addition to the circus, a small fair was also in operation by the end of the day. April was holding one of my hands, while Tiffany was holding onto the other. Tiffany was also hugging a stuffed unicorn that I had won for her when we arrived at their residence. I walked them to the door and attempted to kiss April on the cheek. I attempted to kiss her on the cheek, but she pulled me in and kissed me on the lips. I then embraced her and kissed her back as we pulled away. I became aware of Tiffany tugging on my pants. She wanted a kiss too. Tiffany said, reaching her free arm towards me, and I picked her up and kissed her on both cheeks. I thanked her for coming with me and my mother and for behaving well that day. Tiffany smiled broadly in response to the compliment. As I was about to put her down, April inquired, "Would you like to stay for dinner?" "It's nothing elaborate. I was just going to prepare Tiffany's favorite, Pete's." "I adore Pete's," I replied, lifting Tiffany back onto my hip. "I'd be delighted to have dinner with you two lovely ladies." Tiffany did a commendable job of keeping the tomato sauce largely on her face and hands. Her face and hands. I found myself laughing each time she took another bite of spaghetti while April cleaned her face. I cleaned her hands at one point. Tiffany then grabbed my hand and placed it next to hers, asking, "Why is my skin dark and yours isn't?" I glanced at April, who looked amused. I answered, "Because it makes you and your mother much prettier than me." Tiffany giggled and stated that boys are not considered to be aesthetically pleasing, rather, they are regarded as handsome. I was then asked if I considered myself to be handsome, to which I replied in the affirmative, and my daughter concurred. April then interjected and informed Tiffany that it was time for her bath and bedtime story. After her bath, Tiffany inquired as to whether I would read her a story, and I was happy to oblige. I proceeded to read her 2 stories, utilizing different voices for all the characters. Tiffany was delighted with this. However, she would not calm down until I kissed her good night. After Tiffany fell asleep, April and I sat on the couch, drinking wine and discussing teaching. Suddenly, April set her glass down, took mine from me, and placed it aside. Then, she leaned in and kissed me passionately. I was astonished that this beautiful woman was kissing me, as I often thought to myself that she was one of the most stunning women I had ever seen. "We must relocate this to my bedroom." April whispered, "Please be gentle." Brock was so large that it occasionally caused discomfort, so I eased myself inside her gradually until I was fully inserted. April vocalized her pleasure, exclaiming, "You fit perfectly." After that night, April and I developed a close bond, but we opted not to cohabit until the divorces were finalized. My divorce was settled first, and I was relieved when the final court date arrived. I was in the courtroom when Cindy walked in with Brock. Cindy gave me a self-satisfied smile while clinging to Brock's arm. He smirked at me the entire time, especially after he kissed her before sitting down. I had asked April to stay away because I suspected Brock would be there. The divorce proceedings were relatively straightforward. The judge simply inquired whether both attorneys were satisfied, and upon receiving affirmative responses, he proceeded to terminate the proceedings by striking the gavel. April's divorce was finalized approximately 3 months later. During this period, April and I both completed our doctoral programs, with April subsequently securing a position as an associate professor. I was not offered a professorship, but I was presented with a 2-year teaching contract, which was a notable advancement in my academic career. I was offered a 1-year teaching contract, which was unusual since the college had only offered 1-year contracts before. This was due to the high demand for my classes, which had waiting lists. I was also asked to teach an additional pre-calculus class due to the high number of students enrolling. My salary increased by approximately 25% compared to my previous position as a high school teacher. I was also promised an associate professorship in the near future. Overall, things were going better than I had expected. However, we encountered a challenge when I had to attend a 3-day seminar. The day seminar in Atlanta was a full-day event with only brief intermissions. There were also group study sessions that often continued into the evening. By the time each day ended, I was exhausted and required time to recuperate. I had explained the schedule to April so she would understand. However, Tiffany was unable to comprehend my whereabouts or the rationale behind my failure to notify her of my return. Upon my arrival, she immediately approached me, visibly distressed due to my absence. I attempted to elucidate the circumstances that had transpired, but she remained agitated until I presented her with the pink stuffed dragon, which was among her most cherished possessions. The books in question were Rainbow Dragons, and the dragon that held particular significance for the child was the pink one named Pinky. Upon receiving the dragon, the child expressed great joy and affection, covering the author's face with kisses. Once the child had calmed down, the author and the child sat down for dinner. During the meal, the child made a remark that was noteworthy for its humor. The child, Tiffany, looked at the author and asked, "Why don't you live here? I want you to be my daddy." I responded, glancing at April, who was smiling. "I'd love to be your daddy, but I'm not sure what your mommy would think about that." April continued, her smile fading. "Her mommy would be thrilled if you became Tiffany's daddy, but there's a catch. You'd have to be my husband first. In fact, you'd marry me." I was taken aback by the question. I had assumed you would never inquire about this matter. April responded with a brief, mirthful interjection. We had a relatively modest wedding ceremony, attended by a small number of close friends and family members. My mother passed away when I was 9, and April's mother died when she was 15. Despite these unfortunate circumstances, I was as content as I could be, even though Cindy had left me for a former National Football League player. I had ultimately ended up with the most suitable partner. While Cindy might have been with someone more prominent, I was now married to the most physically attractive woman I had ever met, and she had given birth to a beautiful daughter whom I loved as if she were my own. Throughout the divorce proceedings, Brock persistently contacted April, demonstrating his strong desire to rekindle their relationship. He alternated between begging and making subtle threats. However, he refrained from any action that could result in legal consequences. He was still residing with Cindy, and from what I learned, she seemed content. I felt a sense of pity for her, anticipating that Brock would eventually reveal his true character when Cindy betrayed me. I was devastated and enraged. I was so focused on seeking retribution against both of them that it consumed my thoughts. However, as I began to develop a relationship with April, my anger dissipated, and the desire for vengeance disappeared. Nevertheless, it appeared that fate had a different plan for me, one that would ultimately lead to my revenge. Shortly after we got married, April and I decided to sell her house. We decided to sell our house and purchase a new one in closer proximity to the college. We opted to handle the sale independently and promptly secured a purchaser. However, since Brock's name remained on the deed, he was required to sign the sale contract. April contacted him, and initially, he expressed enthusiasm at her call. Nevertheless, his demeanor swiftly transformed from cheerful to irate when April informed him of her intention to sell the house in order to relocate closer to the college. He declined to sign the requisite contract. His demeanor reflected his typical unpleasant disposition. April was prepared for this response and reminded Brock that their divorce agreement stipulated that he must purchase her interest in the property if he did not wish to sell. His anger was evident, and he terminated the call. However, the following day, he called back and agreed to sign the contract at the closing. On the following day, he called back and agreed to sign the contract at the closing. April inquired as to whether Brock desired any items from the house. He stated that he had no desire for anything and that it was her responsibility to clear everything out. The process of clearing out the house was a significant undertaking. We saved the basement for last, and it was then that I made an unexpected discovery. April then produced a box containing a miscellany of items. At the bottom of the box was an old laptop belonging to Brock. April surmised that he had purchased a new laptop approximately a year and a half after becoming principal of West Jupiter High School, and thus presumed that he had discarded the old one. She inquired as to whether I could repair it. I informed Tiffany that I would attempt to repair the laptop, provided that it remained operational following a battery recharge. Upon recharging the battery, I was astonished to discover that the laptop not only functioned but also retained its stored data. My initial intention was to simply reformat the laptop, however, I subsequently opted to examine the files first to ascertain whether they contained any pertinent information. The files revealed that Brock was not merely an ordinary idiot, but rather, a highly sophisticated individual. While some of the files contained images and videos of April and Tiffany, the majority consisted of photographs and videos of women without clothing, accompanied by Brock. Each video or photo was accompanied by a description outlining the duration of the affair and Brock's rating of the woman in question. While I was unfamiliar with the majority of the women depicted, I was able to identify 5 of them. One was the wife of a Dallas quarterback, another was a renowned model. I also recalled that, shortly after their encounter, the couple Brock was divorced and he was traded. This explained why the other 4 women were teachers at West Jupiter High School. 2 of them were married. Cindy was one of those married teachers. It was evident that Brock was involved with all these teachers at approximately the same time. There were several photos and 2 videos of my former spouse. The recently discovered videos were even more disturbing than the previous one. It was difficult to reconcile the image of my former spouse as a loving individual with the evidence of her promiscuous behavior. However, the content of the messages from Brock to Cindy provided a certain degree of amusement. He commended her sexual abilities but expressed frustration with her excessive attachment to him, even going so far as to suggest the possibility of having a child together, despite her husband's objections. I was on the verge of deleting the files, but then I perceived an opportunity for retribution. I copied the explicit content to a flash drive and continued to examine the laptop. What I discovered next made Brock appear to be the most foolish individual. He had left all of his financial records on the computer. I was astonished to discover that Brock had left detailed financial statements with all of his accounts. Furthermore, he had provided false information regarding his assets during the divorce proceedings. Additionally, he had financial accounts in the Cayman Islands and California that he had not disclosed in court. After reviewing the remaining folders, I contacted April and initially presented her with photographs of the women with whom Brock had been involved. I then proceeded to show her the financial records. It was unclear which of these discoveries caused her greater distress. Ultimately, it was the women that I discovered that Brock had been involved with, including the maid of honor, bridesmaids, and even his cousin. Following this revelation, April had Brock brought back to court for hiding assets from their marriage. While he could have been jailed, the judge ultimately awarded April 65% of the concealed assets. A significant portion of the additional funds was allocated to a college savings account for Tiffany, while another portion was used for a down payment on a residence situated just 2 blocks from the aforementioned college. Following my divorce, I resided in a modest apartment with minimal expenses, relying on my savings and the proceeds from my divorce to match April's down payment. I had not yet determined the regarding Brock's top 10 list of affairs. I retained possession of the flash drive while I deliberated on whether it should be kept or discarded. However, the flash drive remained in my possession due to an incident that occurred at a college fair held at the West Palm Beach Convention Center. I had been invited to speak at the fair, and April had chosen to attend a class elsewhere while I was speaking. The fair hosted approximately 44 colleges and universities, each of which had a booth. High school seniors from nearby schools were in attendance, engaging in discourse with the representatives. Seminars were also conducted on the subject of creating a robust college application, selecting a suitable major, and achieving success in higher education. While I was in the company of the college representative, I became aware of the voice of an individual I hold in particularly low regard. This was Brock Turner, who addressed me with a self-satisfied expression and the words, "Look here, Cindy. It's your unfortunate former husband that is amusing." Brock said with a forced smile, "Because that is precisely what your ex, his wife, described him as, such a jerk." Brock's face turned red. He was tempted to teach me a lesson about respecting his superior, but he decided to ignore me. Brock's wife, Cindy, said, "He's not worth your time. Don't stoop to his level." Brock looked at Cindy and then at me with a nasty grin. He leaned in and kissed Cindy deeply, and she melted into the kiss when they pulled away. As they departed, Brock cast me a self-satisfied glance that effectively settled the matter. I then called after Cindy, informing her that I had discovered some photographs of her on my computer and thought she might be interested in viewing them. She had previously expressed the opinion that individuals should embrace new experiences on a daily basis. Cindy accepted the flash drive I offered her with a muted expression of gratitude. At that moment, April approached me and embraced me warmly. I apologize for my prolonged absence. I was engaged in a discussion with April, who informed me that she is pregnant. I was unaware of this development. I extend my congratulations to her and her partner. Brock's expression changed dramatically when he noticed April's pregnant abdomen. On that night, April and I were in bed, and I was applying lotion to her abdomen. We were only partially attentive to the news until the newscaster commenced a new report. This evening, officers responded to a call at the residence of School Superintendent Brock Turner, where they allegedly encountered a situation pertaining to domestic issues. We currently lack substantial details regarding this incident, but it is evident that Mr. Turner was not seriously injured. At this moment, the situation is life-threatening. We are aware that he is currently in the hospital and Cindy Albee has been taken to county jail. Turning to April with a grin, I commented, "It appears that Cindy has acquired a new skill today."